In 1997, a little RPG game known as Final Fantasy VII came out from the developers of Square. The game had you following in the footsteps of a spiky-haired protagonist with a very large sword, and a plot that was a little bit out there. Don't worry though, Kingdom Hearts, you still have the most confusing plot. 23 years later, we once again step into the shoes of Cloud Strife. And boy oh boy, was the game a doozy. I'm going to be talking about many of the game's aspects throughout this video while trying to avoid as many spoilers as I can. The ending of this video will have a discussion about the game's ending and the future of the franchise, but I will put up a spoiler warning before that. Now with all that out of the way, let's get into it. The Final Fantasy VII Remake saw a lot of changes to its 1997 counterpart, and one of the biggest changes is the combat system. As opposed to your standard RPG, which involves inputting commands and then having to wait, the remake has two new aspects to focus on, which is building up your ATB bar and staggering your enemies. ATB is a huge part of the game's core mechanics, with all of your abilities, spells, and items being linked to the ATB bar. You can bring the bar up by doing your standard or heavy attacks, but you need to be constantly monitoring your bar as it can change the tide of battle. Staggering enemies is also something you want to keep your eyes on. As the stagger bar fills up and reaches its peak, you'll be able to stun enemies for a short period of time and be able to stack on heavy damage. Each enemy has different conditions to be staggered, so make sure you're adapting and trying out new techniques. The game allows you to take control of any of your party members freely, or you can give them pre-input commands throughout the battle. The quick playstyle and actions you choose throughout the game will help you make the game the way you want to play, all while making the game more engaging. Cloud is definitely your run-of-the-mill swordsman and can be balanced out to your liking. Barret is your long-distance gunner and can deal heavy hits from a distance. Tifa is your up-in-the-close brawler and helps bring that stagger bar tremendously, and Aerith is your mage that casts spells and helps your party's stats. The best part is that your entire party is fully customizable to your playstyle, so if you want to make Barret a powerhouse mage or have Tifa be a speedy stagger builder, go for it. No RPG would be complete without some sweet gear, and Final Fantasy hones down on that concept. There's a variety of weapons that the game provides for you, either through natural story progression or through chest. Each party member gets their own unique weapons throughout the game, with two new mechanics being implemented, which is the materia and the skill tree. Each weapon in the game has its own unique ability that once you master its proficiency in, can be used with any weapon at any time. Each weapon also has a skill tree that you can upgrade, allowing for you to enhance weapons and their stats to your liking. I stuck with Cloud's Buster Sword for the first time throughout my playthrough just for nostalgia reasons, but the weapon remains pretty balanced as you upgrade it. You've probably heard me mention materia a few times throughout this video. That's because materia is how you're going to build your character. Spells like Thunder and Cure are now based off materia, and depending if you level them up, can evolve into spells like Thundera and Curaga. Materia can also help increase your health and magic powers, and some even have technical use, like my personal favorite, the Deadly Dodge, that lets you hit immediately after dodging, or the Magnify Materia, that spreads out the effect of your spells. The best materia in the game by far is the Assess Materia that you get pretty early on. This allows you to study your enemies and look at their weaknesses, and guides you how to beat them in mid-battle. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is actually just a small portion of the original game's plot and takes place in the sprawling city of Midgar. The game takes its time fleshing out characters and its story progression over the course of its 40-hour gameplay. You got your main crew, which consists of Cloud, Barret, Tifa, and Aerith, along with a variety of returning characters who are fleshed out more and feel like they have their own objectives and ideals. Cloud's progression throughout the game is refreshing and shows how he goes from a merc who just wants to get paid to someone who actually cares about his friends. Barret's interaction with Marlene, his daughter, shows the humanistic parts of the game, while Tifa and Cloud's relationship show just how much that these characters had to adapt in this new world. Aerith almost acts like a prophet throughout the game, and enhances the game's overall narrative and provides the more intriguing part of the game's story. Sephiroth takes a little step back in this game's narrative and doesn't have a real important impact until the end of the game. The story at first seems very linear, with you following the group of eco-terrorists known as Avalanche trying to stop the corporation Shinra from stealing the Earth's energy known as Mako. The game does a pretty good job of keeping the story linear while throwing in a few different side quests and even main story quests that deviate from the main plot. While the side quests can become a little bit tedious and boring, they tend to hand out good rewards and materia, so it's worth spending a little bit extra time on them. The game stands on its own as an independent game that tells a beginning fraction of the overall story and almost acts as kind of a prologue of sorts. A quick little side note though, the music in the game is phenomenal, with remixed tracks of the original soundtrack and new songs that get you ready for combat. Also, Cloud dances in the game. He dances. I just want to put that out there. Alright, now is when we're going to be diving into spoiler territory, so here's your warning now. Skip ahead if you want the review score and my overall thoughts on the game, or if you don't care about the endgame being spoiled for you. Alright, with that out of the way, the biggest change that the game has to the original game is its plot, with much of the story changing or even being touched upon more. The game's director Tetsuya Nomura is known for adding in different story plots and elements all at once. This is seen in Kingdom Hearts with time travel, alternate timelines, and the idea of just good versus evil. So the question remains, is Final Fantasy a remake worthy of the original? Well, yes and no. While the main plot remains to be a retelling of the beginning of the 1997 game, there are a lot of hints that the game throws at you to tell you that the game is not what it seems. The game has a lot of themes of changing fate, and adds a new important character in the form of the Whispers, the Dementor-looking things that you see throughout the game. Aerith even mentions how they are there to keep Faith linear, and it's interesting that a lot of the times that they pop up are moments where the games are a little bit different from the original timeline. This is seen when Aerith is falling and when Barret gets stabbed, almost as if the Whispers are saying, this isn't how it's supposed to go. Aerith and Sephiroth seem to be the only ones that are aware of this new timeline, always hinting at the idea of fate and how it can or cannot be changed. The biggest moment that shows that there's a possibility of different timelines is the return of Zack Fair, mentor to Cloud and fan favorite character. We get a cutscene that plays out almost identical to Crisis Core's ending, but with a very big difference. Zack doesn't die. We then get a shot of Zack walking with Cloud parallel to Aerith, and for a brief moment they pass each other. While the ending has many fans divided whether it actually was Zack's fate to survive, or whether he just dies later on is still argued upon, but the consensus seems to be that yes, Zack is still alive. This seems to imply that there's a new timeline being at play here, or at least that we're going to be splitting into different timelines. The original timeline from the original game, this new remake timeline, and now a timeline where Zack is still alive. Yeah, confusing stuff. The title even seems to imply a new direction that the game is going in, with Nomura always having this concept of having his titles relate to the game's theme. Remake can actually be the new game remaking the original timeline, which can then have drastic changes like Aerith not dying later on in the game, or have an entirely different antagonist for the crew to fight. Only time can tell the direction that this game is going to take. In conclusion, Final Fantasy holds up on its own against its predecessor and changes the games while still keeping those core Final Fantasy elements. The game's story helps set up a larger story for the future and help flesh out characters in a refreshing way, whether it was Jessie thirsting after you, or the heartbroken Leslie that tries to help you. The game does have its drawbacks, mostly in the form of its side quest and pacing of story, but still provides an action-packed adventure that leaves you wondering where the next game will go. Thanks guys for watching my Final Fantasy review. If you liked that, go check out some of my other videos. I'm also going to be starting Twitch streaming soon, and I'm going to be opening up a Patreon, so stay tuned for that.